Hello, everyone, and welcome to part 2 of our 3-part series discussing tenant brokerage. If you are a commercial business operator or user of commercial space, you are in the right spot to learn a little bit more about leasing commercial space and how a broker can help you do that, some of the common pitfalls and areas that you need to know in order to avoid big mistakes that are oftentimes costly. My name's Rob Cassam. I am the owner and broker in charge of Carolina Realty Advisors. My website is charlottencproperty.com. You can go there to get a little bit more information. And without further ado, let's jump into working with tenants and tenant agency. This section is essentially a description of how a broker can work with a tenant in a commercial transaction. To dive right in here, it's fairly basic. If the real estate firm and its agents represent you as a tenant, then they must promote your best interest, be loyal, follow your instructions, provide you with all material facts that could influence your decision, use skill, care, and diligence, and account for any monies that they handle for you. And if you stop and think about those points, it's very important to think about your best interests. And if you're talking with the broker for the owner or the landlord, and they may not have your best interest in mind. So this is a discussion about how a broker can work with you as a tenant. Once you've agreed, either orally in writing, I don't recommend orally, but if that's the case, the agent that you choose to work with must represent your interests and not give any confidential information about you to the landlord or anyone else without your permission, so long as they represent you. Until you make this agreement with the broker that you're talking to, you really should avoid telling them anything that you wouldn't want the seller or the owner of the property to know. Let's talk a little bit about unwritten agreements. To make sure that you and the real estate firm have a clear understanding of what your relationship will be with the firm, you may want to have a written agreement. Some firms may be willing to represent you without one for a time, but if they decide to make an offer on a lease, a piece of property, then they must obtain a written offer at that point. So you're not going to avoid it. You may prolong it, I guess is a better way to say it. If you don't sign, then the agent can't represent you and is really no longer required to keep information that you've already given him confidential. And if you later lease the property through an agent who first showed you the property, they may seek compensation from the other firm. So you got to be real careful about unwritten agreements. My firm does not do unwritten agreements for tenant representation. Some of the services and compensation that you get, whether you have a written agreement or not, there are many. These are very basic services here. Finding you a suitable property is one of them. Arranging financing if that's required. And on a lease, that's a little bit less common, although it's more common in the tenant improvement area where you need tenant improvements to fix the property up. You may need to get a little bit of financing for that in this economy. The third point is to learn more about the property and, of course, to promote your interests. If you've got a written agency agreement, then they can help you prepare a written lease offer to the landlord. The tenant agent can be compensated in a number of different ways. The tenant agent can be compensated directly by you, or he can seek his compensation from the landlord or the listing agent first, which is the most common way. And if there's a difference, you may be required to pay any sort of a difference. However, if you're working with a good tenant broker, you would know that up front well in advance of even entertaining the idea of that particular property if they're doing their job right. So whatever case maybe you need to make sure that you understand what your compensation arrangement is with the tenant broker so that you don't have a surprise later on. And that should be fully explained to you if you're working with a good professional. There's this third way that you can do this, and that's attempting to work with a broker who's representing both parties, both the landlord and the tenant. If they choose to work that way, we call this dual agency, and it's most likely to happen if you become interested in a property that's listed with your tenant agent or their firm. And this occurs if you've not already agreed to dual agency, either orally or in writing. You're going to be asked to sign a separate document to confirm that. A dual agency situation must treat tenants and landlords fairly and equally, although the dual agent owes them the same duties as you normally would have. There's a risk of divulging certain confidential information, in my opinion, to the other party. And so while the Real Estate Commission recognizes dual agency in North Carolina, we've chosen not to do it because our clients are expecting us to represent their interests aggressively and assertively in a dual agency situation. That is absolutely impossible to do, in my opinion. If you choose dual agency, there needs to be a written understanding of that eventually, and some sort of an understanding about what relationships are going to be and what exactly they're going to be doing for you. If you choose to ride around town without a tenant broker and work directly with the landlord's agent, you're obviously entitled to do that. It's not, I wouldn't recommend it. If it's not my firm or someone in my firm, I would suggest you find someone that you like and trust, because there's a service built into the transaction, in my opinion, that you're essentially paying for that you're not getting. With that being said, if you are going to choose to do that, you will be working with someone as the landlord's agent, and they can still help you find the property, but they are not going to be representing your interest the way the tenant broker would in protecting your rights, as it were. Landlord's agents are compensated by the landlord, so you don't need to worry about that. Although there again, you've got a situation where you're unrepresented essentially. And you've got to ask the question again: what kind of broker do you really want? I mean, do you want someone who's a residential agent trying to help you do this? Do you want someone who does this part-time, or do you want somebody that has experience in representing commercial tenants on commercial space, no matter if it's industrial, retail, office, or a hybrid type of a property? And I would suggest that you work with someone who's got some experience and has done this in the past. With that being said, my contact information is here on this screen. You can get all that if you would like to at my website at charlottencproperty.com. There's more information there, tips about tenant representation and leasing commercial property, and you can follow up there with some more information or call me direct with this information as well. With that being said, I really appreciate your time and consideration today, and I look forward to seeing you on part 3 of this series. Thanks very much and have a great day.